Soldier coming at you today, once again from Robeson County, North Carolina. I hope everybody enjoyed their long weekend for Columbus Day. And for those whiny ass buttholes, Indigenous Persons Day. Anyway, I enjoyed my nice long weekend. Worked on the range, did a little shooting just for grins and giggles. Spent some money at a gun show that probably ought not to have, but hey. So, I'll make an announcement now. I am now officially a part of the CZ75 Club. Yeah. Probably do a video on the J&L Shooting Academy channel this week on that gun. But yeah, I took it out and shot it this week. Sweet! Told my son I should have bought the darn pistol years ago. Looking for a compact, but nobody had one. So I had to settle for a CZ75V. Anyway, that's for you, Brother Kyle. But we're going to get down, well, I'll give you a follow-up too. I told you about the school up the road from me and the whole issue of needing a fence, this, that, and the other. I did receive 2 phone calls this weekend from members of the county school board in regards to that matter. One of which forwarded me an email from the superintendent of Robeson County Schools, stating that after his visit last Friday to the school, he deemed that a fence was necessary. They're going to put a fence up. And I'm thankful for that. I really am. As I told them, I'm not trying to get somebody fired. I'm not trying to get somebody in trouble. However, when something happens to a child, because certain things, safety-wise and consideration, were overlooked, ignored, complacent, whatever you want to call it, and then something happens to a child, it's too late then. Then everybody gets into what's called CTA mode. If nobody's familiar with what that means. Some people call it CYA, CTA, if you're referring to the party, other party. It's cover their ass mode. Not safe for work with children, you've been forewarned. But they get into cover their ass mode. Now I've seen that happen all too often in the Army. I hate to say it. During times I was in units that had crappy leadership, there were leaders that would rather cover their ass than do the right thing. Especially when something serious was about to happen. Some got away with it, some got caught and were busted or relieved. So when I had good leadership, we didn't have that issue. Because good leaders always do the hard right over the easy left. Didn't mean I always personally liked what they did, but I respected it. So, there's that tidbit of news, boys and girls and boys of all ages. Just thought I'd share that with you. So, I've remained silent over the weekend and didn't put nothing out. Just kind of tried to decompress a little bit, but kind of hard when you're seeing all the stuff being posted all over the news. One of which being this, is if you watch the news, Hamas's attack on Israel. Cowardly, unwarranted. Now there's people out there that say that Israel's this evil colonizing country, but if you look at the grander scheme of things of Arab countries that have been colonized by other Arabs, no. If you don't like the Jewish faith and the Jewish people, that's fine. You ain't got to. But to say that Israel's actually a bad country in the Middle East, I draw the line there. And I'm going to tell you why. Now, some people are going to argue, well, this, that, and the other, but I'm going to from 1948, when they got their independence after the British Mandate ended, they were given their unilateral independence. The very next day, they were invaded by no less than 6 armies from 6 different Arab nations. And they themselves had a standing army, and this is active and reserve, all told, of about 60,000. About 10% of their entire population at that time was 600,000 people. And they were able to defeat those armies that were against them. But some of the towns during those initial days that were overrun, and the Arabs slaughtered the people there to the last person. Men, women, children. Fast forward a few years later, Israel's still developing. They're fighting a border war, if you will. Constant incursions either from Golan Heights being bombarded by Syria, incursions coming out of Lebanon, and incursions coming out of the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, Jordan. All these great Arab nations that we tout are these wonderful things, but basically conducting the cowardly operations in order to not conquer Israel, but to eradicate people. You see, the modern Israeli nation, every war they've been in has been a war for the fight for their very existence. I've covered this before. It's not like wars in the past in Europe where, the victor, graciously accepts the surrender of the loser, and then, everybody pats everybody on the back, and they all kiss and make up, and economies are restored, and people that were once enemies become friends. It doesn't happen when Israel is threatened. Every major war that Israel has fought has been for its very survival. Now, people say, well, soldier, in 1956, Israel struck first. Yeah, because the size of their military, the resources that were available to them, it was a preemptive strike. Now, mind you, the 1956 war, they were encouraged by Great Britain and France. Israel didn't come up with that on their own. Great Britain and France put them up to it. Why? Because Nasser had nationalized the Suez Canal. Well, what did that mean for Great Britain and France? That meant higher fees to cross the Suez Canal. Yeah. I mean, they were going to start paying to transport goods across the Suez Canal. So they wanted to punish Egypt. But, in all fairness, Egypt had been being bolstered by the Soviet Union with military equipment and advisors. And so were other of the Arab nations. So Israel was able to strike and bring it down a few notches. Still outnumbered on all sides in the event of had it turned into an all-out war. So fast forward to 1967. Israel gives the impression that they're at peace and everything's fine. Nobody's worried about going to war. And they conduct a preemptive strike on Syria, Jordan, Egypt. Why? Because all the big Arab nations had been putting Egypt up to attacking Israel again. So much so that Nasser closed off the Straits of Tiran. If you don't know where it is, folks, go look on a map. But it gives Israel access to the Red Sea and then further out into the larger oceans of the world so they can trade. So Israel launches a preemptive strike then, destroying the air forces of Jordan, Syria, and Egypt. And then they go into Syria and they go into Egypt. And yes, they conquered ground and took ground. They also were able to reclaim Jerusalem and the holiest site for the Jewish people in Jerusalem, the West Wall, or I want to say it's the Western Wall, but the Wailing Wall, I think is what they actually call it. But it's one of the holiest sites for the Jewish faith. Now, 6 years later, Israel gets a little complacent. A little bit. Because between 67 and 73, they're fighting a border war along the Suez Canal, also interdicting terrorists coming across the Syrian border. At this point in time, though, they have control of the Golani Heights. So the artillery shelling that was previous to the 67 war, where Syrians were shelled into Israeli settlements down in the Jordan River Valley, was able to be put to a stop. Fast forward now, 1973, Israel, like I said, it got just a little complacent. They really weren't listening to their own intelligence officials that there was a buildup. And sure enough, it was a simultaneous strike from the east and the west. Egypt from the west and Syria from the east, along with, I want to say, Iraqi division. I think Jordan sat this one out. I have to go back and refresh my memory on that one. Long story short, on the Syrian front, it was a massive armor attack, big time. On the western front, it was a lot of armor, but at the same token, the Egyptians had now learned how to use tank cutter teams. All right? That's dismounted infantry with anti-tank weapons, folks. Don't know what that means. That was devastating the Israeli defenses along the Suez Canal. Now, mind you, because Israel does not have the manpower that the other nations have, they could not man every outpost along that static line on the Suez Canal to monitor everything. Just couldn't. However, the Israeli reserve system, once mobilized, did what it was supposed to do, and it got soldiers into the fight and got equipment where it needed to be so that they could turn back the tide of the enemy forces attacking them. Because also in the western part, Egypt had now got new air defense technology, and that kept Israel from using their air power effectively. But they were eventually to get across the Suez Canal to the west bank of the Suez Canal, and they got in and started knocking out some of those air defense sites. And once that happened, Israeli air power came into play, and they like to destroy the bulk of the Egyptian army in the Sinai Desert. Same thing going on the Syrian front in the Golani Heights. Once these reserve army units got put together and started moving up, they were able to turn back the tide there and actually push beyond the original 67 war borders. At the end of the day, boys and girls and boys, Israel has a God-given right to defend themselves, their borders, their people. You don't have to like them. You don't have to care for them. I can give a rat's ass whether you do or you don't. Okay? But they have a right to defend themselves. And I'm not going to get into the whole Second Amendment, why Israel needs to have a better Second Amendment type policy like we do. I was kind of surprised to find out that the majority of Israelis were not allowed to own firearms. I've never really dug into that because one time it used to be the majority of men were required to stay in the reserves until 45, and they kept their firearms at home. I'm guessing that may have changed since the last time I read that article. But apparently now their minister that handles that is laxing the rules on that to allow Israeli civilians to now possess firearms or make it easier to get them with more ammunition. Good for them for that. So, there you have it. That's my opinion of things right now. I hope the IDF goes into Gaza and levels the whole daggum place and sends the Palestinians packing. Oh, soldier, that's a cruel thing to say. What about their men and women and children? Okay, well, Hamas should have thought about that crap before they launched this attack into Israel. And bar none of this, folks, make no bones about it. Israel does not owe the Palestinian state anything. They don't owe them anything. And let's go back a couple of presidents. The one that's got his hand up the current president's ass, that demanding Israel go back to their 1967 borders. Who the hell are we to tell another country where their borders should be? It'd be like us going up and telling Canada, hey, Canada, we need to go back to the 1814 borders where we actually owned all this up, right up to here. We got what we got today. They got what they got. Because the truth of the matter is this, and they said Israelis are bad about it too, but the Palestinians are worse. They don't want to admit they're related. Oh my God, old soldier, what are you talking about? Yeah. Read your basic instructions before leaving Earth, people. Did you catch that? If you didn't, well, I'm not going to spell it out for you. You need to figure it out yourself. But read your basic instructions before leaving Earth. There's some things in there that's elaborated too, in regards to the racial makeup of Palestinians as we know them today. Well, how are the people of Israel related to them? Read your basic instructions before leaving Earth. Now, mind you, though, there's a very high percentage of population in Israel that are of European makeup. How could that be? Simple. When Israel became a nation in 1948, they opened up to anybody of the Jewish faith that wanted to settle there as a citizen, no questions asked. There were many of the Jewish faith that had been born and raised in Europe, but knew they were no longer welcome there. For various reasons, misnomers and misconceptions, yada, yada, yada. So many chose to travel to Israel and relocate and live there. Well, how did they get in Eastern Europe and all these other European countries, old soldier? Read your basic instructions before leaving Earth. Preferably the Old Testament. It will tell you how they got in those regions. I'm not going to give you a history lesson today. But anyway, there's my 6 cents worth on what that going on over there. And like I said, I hope the IDF goes in and pushes Hamas right into the sea. Sends them to meet their makers, every one of them. And I pray the Palestinian people will give them up in droves, so they, they're so blindly led and they follow so blindly, it's not even funny. And for all the people that have been kidnapped by Hamas during this event, pray for their safe return, especially the children. Anyway, that's my stance on it. If you don't agree with me, well, it's just tough. I really don't care. And if you want to stop following this channel because of my beliefs on that, bye. Don't care. I view the nation of Israel as an ally in the Middle East. If you don't, that's fine. You can take your viewership somewhere else. I don't care. I'm not here for a popularity contest. And I'm not going to trade barbs with you. If you don't agree with me, see ya. But anyway, folks, off to work I go because, well, got nothing better to do. Once I get another one out, y'all stay safe, stay vigilant. I'll close with this. What's happened in Israel could very well and potentially happen here, i.e. the southern border. So, prepare yourselves.